Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for this week's edition of Inside the Zone. Where does the time go?
Week 6.
It is.
And we're home stretch almost to the regular season.
After this Friday, we'll be 2/3 of the way done with the regular season, which seems like we just started like last week.
Yeah.
But conference race is really starting to shake out. Normally we just kind of go ahead and talk about what's coming up this week. I want to take a look in the rear view because we've been looking forward to Leo East Noble for quite some time, pretty much all season long. And it was kind of an ebb and flow to that game.
It was, yeah.
What are your big takeaways from that? Obviously, Leo pulls it out, but they did give up the lead. East Noble battled back. I mean, it was really kind of an instant classic as far as, those two teams are concerned in that rivalry.
It made me already look ahead to round 2. I mean, you feel pretty confident that they're going to meet again at some point in the sectional, whether it's week 1, whether, in first week of the postseason, sectional championship, who knows? But we've already seen it the last 2 years. They've played twice, each season. I expect the same this year. And the early part of that game, first half, you're like, this isn't looking good for East Noble. Second half looked a lot better. Leo was just able to execute down the stretch and get the win.
We've talked about it a lot, I think, on the show, is can you make Leo one-dimensional? And if they become one-dimensional just with the run offensively, is anybody good enough to stop what they have with the beef up front and the versatility of the number of backs that can run the football for them? I think they only threw one pass, was it?
Yeah.
And they still beat a quality team like that. I mean, is their running game just that good where even if they can gang up 9 guys in the box, they can still run the football against a good defense?
I expected East Noble to have a better showing, quite frankly, up front in the trenches against Leo. But Leo was able to get that significant push, particularly in that first half, to the point that they were pushing East Noble defensive linemen into the linebackers, preventing them from making the plays. And it was going to have to be the safeties and defensive backs coming down to make tackles in that run game. So very impressed with what Leo was able to do, but you have to conversely be impressed with what East Noble was able to do in the second half, coming back from down 20, tying the game. It was a weird game where Leo goes 5 for 5 on 2-point conversions, and then you have East Noble trying to keep pace. They miss a pair of 2-point conversions and a PAT, so it was that dynamic that kind of led us to 32-32. And, it was weird when you looked at it, 32-32, yet Leo had scored 5 touchdowns, and East Noble had scored 5 touchdowns, Leo had only scored 4 touchdowns, yet they were tied. So it was just kind of a weird dynamic, and this round 1 goes to Leo, but as we saw last year, just because you beat your rival in the regular season doesn't mean you're going to do it again in the playoffs.
Both of these teams have high hopes when it comes to making a long run in the postseason. So when you take a look at this game, what's your big takeaway for Leo, and what's your big takeaway if you're the East Noble coaching staff? Because if you're Leo, I think you're pleased that you built a 20-point lead on this team, but you're not pleased that you let them back in it. But then again, you are pleased that you came out and finished the job, late in the fourth quarter and got the win. If you're East Noble, man, you're not happy with the way it started, but boy, are you happy with the adjustments you made at halftime and the second half to make this a game. I mean, there's positives and negatives to take out of this for each team, but also, ultimately, huge learning experience. What are your takeaways for each of these two teams?
I feel like if you're Leo, you're going, okay, we were able to go toe-to-toe and dominate a team in the trenches like East Noble for the better part of the game. That's an advantage because prior to this, we have seen them dominate, but you're like, they haven't faced the caliber of opponent like East Noble, right? 2, you were able to play a complete 4 quarters for the first time all year. A lot of times in the second half, your starters were on the bench. And then 3, facing adversity on the road, blowing a 20-point lead, tied, all the momentum is going East Noble's way. You're on the road, Kendallville's rocking, and to be able to make the plays to get down the field and score that touchdown to win. So that's Leo's takeaways, and I think East Noble, to your point, come back from down 20, face adversity, and I think Xander Brazel took another step forward in terms of commanding that offense. Wasn't able to make the plays late, down inside the red zone, but it's not all on him. I feel like, going forward over the rest of this year and 2 more years, it's Xander Brazel's team offensively.
Yeah, they had a shot. I mean,
they did.
When you saw the halftime score, you're like, woof, Leo's going to run away with this thing. East Noble made it a game, much to their credit. Let's talk about this week's game of the week on the Highlight Zone, because it's very similar in terms of the dynamic that we had last week with East Noble Leo. Essentially, most people would say the NE8 title game unofficially. Right. This will be the ACAC's unofficial title game when you've got South Adams making the short drive up to Adams Central. I mean, this is a game, again, when you look at the schedule, you always look at week 6 when these two teams collide. You would have liked, if you're South Adams, not to have the performance or a loss on your schedule per Monroe Central last week, though that was a tough matchup. How do you look at this game? What do you see as some of the key points? Because whereas East Noble and Leo, I think it was a real 50-50, I think you have to give Adams Central the edge going into this one, correct?
Yeah, significant edge at this point. You know, when you looked at South Adams going on the road to Monroe Central last week, shut out, you know, for the first time since Grant Mosier's first season at the helm of South Adams, and you're looking at a Monroe Central team that you feel is significantly behind Adams Central in terms of their dominance in Class 1A. And AC's been able to do it, you know, just destroyed Heritage last Friday. And, you know, the matchup, just all indicators is Adams Central. I think if you're South Adams, you're just trying to keep this one close. Maybe you can get a couple bounces go your way, maybe get some early momentum. But, you know, the landing strip at Minnick Field is going to be rocking, and you have to feel like this is, you know, the proof in the pudding that Adams Central has ascended back to the top of the ACAC after South Adams having a 2-year stretch where it owned it.
What is it about AC that presents South Adams with so many challenges? I mean, to me, when I look at the stats, they run the ball super effectively. Right. They're like 8.2 yards a carry as a team, but there isn't one guy that's got, I don't think there's even a guy that has 500 yards. There isn't a guy that has 600, 700, you know, huge numbers, and we're already 5 games into the season. It's, you know, the sum is the great, I don't know what the saying is. What is it? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Yeah, that's what there you go. See, that's what we bring you in for. That's what it feels like with Adams Central's offense. You know, the collaboration of these guys makes it all work best.
There's nothing more demoralizing in football than knowing exactly what your opponent's going to do and not going to be able to stop it. So if you're Leo, everybody knows what Leo's going to do. You just can't stop it, right? And I feel like we're there with Adams Central too, is everybody knows they're going to run it, but they're also going to mix in some Ryan Black play actions, more than likely to Bryson Yergler. But you just can't stop it. You know, physically, talent-wise, you can't not stop it. And that's kind of where AC is right now is, look, you know what AC does under Coach Michael Mosier. It's just you cannot match up with being able to slow it down. And then, you know, conversely, the last couple of years with South Adams, you knew what they were going to do. They're going to spread you out. They're going to attack you downfield. They're going to pick you apart in that passing game, mix in some run. Everybody knew what you could do, but if you can't match up with it, it doesn't matter. So I feel like that's where advantage at AC this year is, you know, when you mix in Curry and Neuenschwander and all those guys and a veteran offensive line and defensive front, you got no shot.
When you look at this, though, you mentioned the history of Grant Mosher down at South Adams. I remember a game where we were like, they don't have a shot when they were facing Woodland, #1 in the state, in the playoffs, not all that long ago. I want to say 5-6 years ago. Which actually is a long time ago. Because these guys have graduated and cycled out. Neither here nor there. But this was a team you'd think, okay, South Adams hosting Woodland, #1 in the state in the postseason. They don't have a shot.
Right.
They win it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the bigger surprises that we've seen in the last decade in the Fort Wayne sports scene as far as high school football goes. So even though there is, you know, a certain gap in between these two teams at this season, I wouldn't put it past South Adams, especially because this is one of those, I hate the cliche, but you throw out the records, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, this is we've seen Adams Central beat South Adams. We didn't think they could as well. I mean, it's happened both ways.
Yeah, and I feel like the motivator for Adams Central here is how South Adams has owned the series the last couple of years. And this is your time, particularly this ultra-talented senior group, to finally go out and take it to the Starfires after seeing, you know, loss after loss the last couple of years, and South Adams own the ACAC. So that in itself, I think, is motivation to go out on Friday night and dominate. And who knows, similar to Leo and East Noble, maybe this is merely round 1 between these two teams.
If there's one thing that South Adams can do to stay in this game, to maybe win this game, to make it close, if there's one X factor, one thing that they can do, what do you think it is for this one?
They need to force some turnovers. They need to be able to not get down early, and I feel like if they can get a couple bounces go their way, maybe a couple of balls on the ground put down by Adams Central, recover, give their offense some short fields, that would help immeasurably because we know, once again, Aiden Wanner's not going to be available. Trey Schock is uncertain here. Sam Plattner, you don't expect him back. And so in terms of the experience factor, it's significantly on the side of AC, even if South Adams was healthy, but they're not. And that's even more in terms of guys that have been around, been in these battles in this rivalry game for Adams Central.
We talked about AC's offense a lot, but their defense has only given up 6.8 points a game. Now,
Yeah.
okay, they shut out Heritage last week, but the Park Heritage shutout was impressive.
Right.
Like, week 3, I think. They've
I
really
mean,
been
Belmont was a Belmont week 1. I mean,
yeah, they've really been one of the few teams that's been able to contain Laban Davis this
Yes.
season. I don't feel like the AC defense gets enough love. And then, if you're South Adams offensively, you got shut out last week at Monroe Central. I would say this is a better defense than what they faced last week. That would be concerning to me.
Absolutely.
More so than AC's offense. If you got to score to win, and that's going to be tough to do against AC.
Right, and to your point, I think AC's defense is better than Monroe Central's, and South Adams to struggle on the road like they did last week. It's going to be the same unit that goes out there on Friday against, in my opinion, an inferior or a superior opponent to Monroe Central. So that's the problem for South Adams. If they can get a couple scores and keep it close early and hang around, we've seen Adams Central do that before, right, against South Adams when we felt the Starfires were the superior team. Is in the playoffs, a couple of years ago when they knocked them off, is they hung around, and the next thing you know, we're in the fourth quarter and it's a one-possession game. So if South Adams can do that, they have a shot. I just feel like this AC team is on a mission. I see so many similarities between this AC team and the South Adams team of a year ago. Is like, look, in terms of mindset, every week we're locked in. We're not allowing distractions to really get in the way and hamper us. It's an attitude that I saw a lot in Bern last year. We're seeing it this year in Monroe.
This has got to be the longest we've gone on the show without talking about the SAC.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the SAC, but it is kind of a down week. You look at the schedule and like, where's the sexy matchup this week?
There ain't nothing popping on the schedule this week, really, as far as the SAC goes. But I feel like last week's games gave us more intrigue going forward to set up really week 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
Because, Carroll just came out and stuck it to Bishop Dwenger early and earned a big victory on the road, 42-23. And then I remember being at one of my games. They're like, what's the Homestead Snyder score? I was like, it's 14-0 at half. They're like, oh, Homestead's up. I was like, no, Snyder's up.
Snyder's
14-0.
up. Shut him out in the first half.
Which it gives us even more intrigue for Snyder, who's now 3-1 and quote unquote 4-1, depending on how you view that Southside forfeit.
Yeah.
That seemingly could loom large as we move along in the season. But Lures right now 5-0, Carroll 4-1, Snyder 3-1, and then Dwenger and Homestead 3-2. What did you learn last week now that you've seen Carroll have a great performance against Dwenger, and then Snyder beat Homestead because Homestead's kind of been a little bit of a bugaboo for them in recent years?
Well, how it's shaping up now, you look at, okay, Carroll only has one loss, but effectively they're 2 games behind because they have the loss to Lures. And thankfully in the SAC, we break ties if we can, unlike every other conference in the area. So Carroll effectively needs a lot of help. They need Lures to have 2 losses. And you look at Snyder sitting there, and that week 9 game, Snyder and Lures, is now, when you look at the schedule, the biggest remaining game on the slate in the SAC, if things stay as they are. And, at the time we felt we're not going to have to worry about that Southside Snyder game that was canceled. Now all of a sudden we're going, how are we going to do this? And from what I've heard, and they're still debating back and forth what they do, the simplest thing to do, and is what I've heard, is it's a 2-0 forfeit. Snyder wins. They beat Southside. It's a win in the win column. And now, so we can go in the next 4 weeks not wondering what the SAC is going to do.
Right.
Just make the decision now. Snyder's 4-1. Let's all move on with our lives instead of staring at the standings and going with every passing week going, okay, how is this going to work out?
Yeah. There's a half game, but it's not like a half game in most things because of the way they do the ties. You look at Lures' remaining schedule. They got Northrop this week, week 7 against Dwenger. Is that a throw out the record kind of thing? Because,
yes.
we've seen some really good battles in the Battle of the Bishops before. Then you've got Southside for Lures in week 8, and then you mentioned Snyder in week 9. Really, you're circling the Dwenger at week 7. That's at Dwenger, and then at home against Snyder in week 9 if you're Bishop Lures.
Look, I mean, Bishop Dwenger struggled the last couple weeks, but when you looked at the matchup up front, that is where they got pushed around because this Bishop Dwenger team is not very big up front, but neither is Bishop Lures. So when you're looking at matchups, could Bishop Dwenger, be able to match up a little bit better with 2A Lures in that week 7 matchup? It's the cliche, throw the records out, and I agree with the Battle of the Bishops, but when you're looking at body of work thus far, I think Bishop Lures is a superior team. And Carson Clark is just, he hasn't thrown a pick since week 2, and he seems to be getting into that rhythm he did last year when he, went 9, 10 weeks in a row without a pick. That rivalry game is big, and it can go either way, but the programs seem to be trending in different directions right now over the last couple weeks.
I agree with the Carson Clark. Like, he hit his groove in the postseason last year, and we were like, maybe that's because it's against these 2A teams, but we're seeing those same type of performances, the same confidence, the same ability to mix it up. He throws on the run better than I think he gets credit for. And we're seeing it now against the SAC and some of the SAC's best. So kudos to him for continuing that performance. Let's take a look at the NECC as well. You got Fremont at Churubusco, West Noble at Garrett, Central Noble at Lakeland, East Side at Prairie Heights, and Angola at Fairfield. Not a lot of crazy great matchups in this one. But East Side, just continues to impress. Laban Davis with another huge game, over 300 yards on the ground in a rivalry game, in a train trophy game. And you had to look at it last week that I would have picked Garrett and East Side as 2 of the best 3 teams in the NECC, regardless of big or small division. And East Side pretty well took care of Garrett.
And Eastside continues to do what it's going to do in the NECC, and I feel like, I'm going to sound like a broken record over the next month because I feel like Eastside rolls through the rest of their NECC schedule. They win the small school division. They're the best team in the league by considerable margin, but how do they match up with Bishop Lures in the sectional? And I think that's how I'm grading Eastside, and quite frankly, I think that's how Todd Mason is grading his team because he has had a couple wins this year where he has been upset after the game with how his team performed. Wins over Adams Central, wins over Churubusco, because he knows the level of competition raises significantly when that team plays the Knights, if they do in the postseason. So while Eastside is dominating their opponents, I think in the back of everyone's mind, at least mine, we're looking at it and go, but is this team really good enough to match up with Bishop Lures? And I feel like that's what Todd Mason is thinking too, trying to elevate that level of play. And now here we are in the final month of the regular season. They need to do it quick.
To wrap things up this week, again, it's week 6, 2/3 of the way through the regular season. What have you been most surprised by this year? And what are you looking forward to over the next third of the regular season, the final third of the regular season, as we get ready for the playoffs?
I underestimated Bishop Lures' ability to handle the SAC schedule. I felt like looking at this group before the year, yes, very good. 2A state contender, absolutely. Can they go in and beat 6A and 5A and 4A opponents consistently in the SAC? I didn't think so because we hadn't been able to see it since Carroll and Homestead joined the SAC. But we're seeing it through the first 5 weeks of the season. I think you could debate whether the league is down a little bit in terms of those top teams. I think we can all agree that Bishop Dwenger is down a little bit. Carroll would argue, hey, we're better than we have been the last couple of years, so throw Snyder in there. Maybe not a typical Snyder team, at least through the first 4 or 5 games. So, but you can still look at Bishop Lures, a Class 2A opponent going in, smallest school in the league, and the best team, at least through the first 5 weeks in the league. That's a surprise for me. And then I think going down the stretch, I think we're going to really start looking. Let's identify our state contenders, right? 1A, we feel good with Adams Central. 2A, we feel good with Bishop Lures. Do we have an upper echelon team that can compete? Can Snyder continue their trend upward? 4A, is Leo or East Noble? Is that one of those teams? So I think this is where we're going to find out over the next 3-4 weeks, see which of these teams is peaking at the right time, maybe make a run at Indy.
I love it. I love it. We could have a very busy Thanksgiving week. Thanks to our teams. I mean, I do. I think we'll have at least 2 teams there.
It'd be great.
It would be
as long
great.
as it's on the same day.
Yes, that would be awesome too. That would be awesome too. Because Black Friday, we can't have that. You know, we both have wives. We gotta, and we both, have those big bank accounts. So we have to figure out a
Yeah.
way to make the money work.
Right, that we just don't want to be told what the bill is. right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
We will join you next Monday here on Inside the Zone, but for this week, he's Justin, I'm Glenn, and we'll see you next week.